Guys, I gotta come clean. I've been keeping a secret from you all, and it's been eating me alive, because I think I unearthed something a while back about Emu, and I haven't been able to look at them the same way ever since. Because the true king of the world, that guy right there, they're a dragon, and that's the only reason I think that they're actually able to be the true king of the planet all by themselves. Like, I believe that the only way to really become the one true king of the One Piece world is to literally become the embodiment of heaven and earth, aka the Dragon God's King. And also that before Emu was this, Nika was. Now, is any of that confirmed? No, it's not. This is a theory video, but I do think it is about to be very soon. And it's all thanks to Harley and the big mural at the end of chapter 1138, and more specifically, this big shadowy figure at the top of the first world section. Now, to come completely clean, I was actually already working on this video a while back, but then when chapter 1138 dropped a while ago and showed us the true history of the world, my eyes just completely lit up. I mean, there is a god dragon in the series, and everything I've been researching has actually some meaning, and not just me really wanting to talk about dragons. Now, for context, originally I wanted this to be a video to find out where all the dragons in One Piece went, and that then eventually led me to believe that Emu themselves was actually a dragon. But now, with everything that's been revealed, I'm pretty confident that not only is Emu really a dragon, but Nika was as well, and the story how I discovered this was through Japanese mistranslations, literary allusions, and symbolism, and now, of course, the Harley. So, please allow me to break it all down for you, and you can then decide for yourself if this dragon tale is all that, or even more potentially. There's one part of having this job and living in Japan right now that drives me up a wall more than anything else almost every single week, and that is just how much misinformation gets spread during the translation of the story to Western audiences, basically with every single chapter. And to be fair, I'm not blaming anyone here, it's completely natural. I mean, Dragon Ball had a similar issue in their dub, but I also gotta say, for that series, Goku then became Superman, but for us in One Piece land, we got Zolo and a mistranslated Bing Sake, which turns out, was actually really important, which is kind of part of why I really wanted to show you this idea and set the record straight once and for all, because the translation of the original story really needs to be correct, or non-Japanese audiences, like potentially yourself, get really inaccurate information about One Piece. And in today's case specifically, there is one massive mistranslation that's definitely been hiding the true nature of the most powerful people in the One Piece world. I'm talking about the Celestial Dragons, and no, they're not actually supposed to be called that, I think. Because when you actually break down what they're called in the Japanese original, which is how I read One Piece myself, you actually get a bunch of much more nuanced translations instead. And while the official translation uses Celestial Dragons, that's actually only half of the full title, really. Here is what the kanji actually are. The first symbol is Ten, and it means heaven or celestial. Next up is Ryu. This symbol, a lot of people might actually know this from various anime and things like Overwatch or Street Fighter, that this symbol is of course dragon. And so at this point I hear you saying, Manu, you just literally said that it means celestial dragons, and yes, but that's again not the full title of the Celestial Dragons, because it's actually the Tenryu Bito, not the Tenryu. The Tenryu would be the Celestial Dragon, but they specifically added Hito, or Bito in this case, at the end, and that symbol means person, or in this case more specifically, people. And so when we actually accurately combine all of the segments here, the full word actually shifts from the Celestial Dragons to one of the following. They translate much more literally to the Heavenly Dragon people, or a slight shift would be the people of the Heavenly Dragon. There's also the more informal translation, which would be Sky Dragon Clan, and then the most formal, which is Divine Dragon Nobles. And when you really think about it, isn't it kind of wild that one little section, like one kanji being mistranslated, completely changes what these people actually are? Like, it's almost like leaving a whole word out of something and that suddenly changes the entire meaning of a sentence. Honestly, I wish the official used the actual literal translation, because they're actually pretty cool compared what we actually got, I think. I think my personal favorite translation would be the Divine Dragon Nobles, even though it's the most loose of the ones I have here, as it really flexes their self-proclaimed nature, and kind of seeing as the Harley literally says man became gods after slaying the sun, this is like the most arrogant version of what their title could actually be, but again, this is also the most loose translation. For this video specifically, I want to stick with the people of the Heavenly Dragon. Now, the reason that this is also super important, I think, is because it shifts kind of how these characters are supposed to be viewed in the story. Again, they aren't these celestial dragons themselves, but instead they are the people of this Heavenly Dragon, and this actually should have clued everyone in way earlier to the fact that a character like Imu could have existed, because the phrasing here very much implies that these divine people at the top of the world are descendants or followers of some other greater being, a divine dragon. So yeah, as you can see, even without all of the new information that we've gotten, simply their title alone accurately translated already seems to imply that Imu, the man who sits atop of the heavenly throne, is the actual celestial dragon, and all the losers who follow him are just pretty much that. Followers. But I gotta be more precise, I gotta say they're all losers except for the Figurins and the Don Quixotes. They're kind of actually goated clans, I gotta admit. But alright, with that out of the way, since I've caught you up to speed with my mini Japanese lesson now, I can tell you now what I've gathered from all of this, and I think it's pretty cool. And I gotta say, I'm no dragon expert, but I do like myself a good dragon here and there in a good story, and also basically all of the key themes that dragons represent in media. I don't have to tell you that mostly dragons are the pinnacle of power and literally scratch heaven itself with their wings. They often personify concepts such as wealth, strength, and power, not to be confused with wealth, fame, and power. That's what the One Piece represents, of course, but that's of course why dragons are often seen standing on top of mountains of gold, or why dragons are often the alternate form of literal gods. Whenever they appear, they're literally peak fiction, and I can kind of get behind that idea. I mean, hell, the celestial dragons literally tax the world and sit on a mountain of wealth and on top of a literal mountain too. But not only that, dragons also usually represent something other really important, which is hidden knowledge. And if you know anything about One Piece, it's, well, number one, Luffy's a rubber boy with a silly hat, but if you actually know anything about One Piece, it's that the world government, the pawns of the celestial dragons, love gatekeeping knowledge like it's their hobby. I don't know, have no good parallel. Anyways, it's kind of their entire thing, right? If someone were to, I don't know, uncover the hidden secrets of history, they may, you know, end up with a bullet in their head, I guess. Or if they're really unfortunate, their entire island is blown up in a flurry of hellfire. In fact, secret knowledge is often referred to as the greatest and ultimate taboo in the series, and we know for a fact that Imu despises anyone who tries to uncover the true history. I mean, remember, they literally said that releasing the poneglyphs was Lily's greatest mistake that they ever made. And all things considered, I kind of think that this is the major concept that Dragon Lord God King Imu is actually based on. He represents the dragon at the top of the world who contains the true hidden knowledge, because he knows about the eternal flame or the forbidden sun. He also knows about the three worlds and the gods, the ancient weapons, literally all of it. Which actually, when you think again about the crazy mural that we see at the end of chapter 1138, makes a ton of sense, I think. I mean, it does seem like Imu has been around ever since the first world. I'm basing that on the big pointy crown guy here and the phrasing of the Harley. I've been kind of interpreting that very figure right here on that big Zou kind of thing to be Imu. You know, representing the king of the first world, also known as the Earth God, who enslaved the rest of the world after uncovering the forbidden sun inside the core of the planet. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, for more context on that, you can check out that massive breakdown of the mural I did after you watch this video, because it will really tie in nicely to this and help make more sense of everything. But for now, all you basically need to know is that Imu seems to be a king in the first world, but then clearly becomes this kind of wicked winged demon dragon thing in the second world, battling against what we assume is Joy Boy and his merry band of misfits. The most dangerous of which, I gotta say, is clearly this fish right here. Now, I don't know why, but this fish kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't know, I'm calling it now. You just wait, I'm gonna find out your secret, fish, if it's the last thing I do. Now, fish aside, the mural actually ties in pretty nicely to the next big thing I noticed as well. Because if you're an eagle-eyed viewer, you may have noticed that there is a literal giant dragon on top of that big tree that seems to contradict my idea that Imu is a dragon right off the get-go, right? As I already said, that Imu is the king here, which, yes, you're correct, is not that dragon. But you see, dear viewer, I don't believe that that's an actual issue. I think it actually proves my point even more. You see, based on the Harley, I've come to the conclusion myself that this dragon is very likely Nika, the actual sun god. And I also think that Imu ate him, like consumed his corpse and literally became the celestial dragon afterwards. Which is a wild idea, but if I'm right, is I think the coolest thing to happen in the series. Cooler than Zoro, cooler than Kaido, and I think even cooler than my man Skopper who now finally hit the scene. Okay, but understandably, you want to hear the evidence for this. Why do I think this? It does seem kind of bold for me to say that Imu was the celestial dragon and then to say that Nika is actually the original celestial dragon that got eaten, but really I think it makes a ton of sense that they are both the same dragon in different eras. And to start things off, for me, a major part of it has to do with the wording on celestial or heavenly dragon, because obviously these words are kind of associated with outer space, radiance, and divinity. Celestial means positioned in or relating to the sky or outer space, and heavenly means to come down from the heavens or, again, the sky. Now, those aren't really words that you would typically associate with the Earth God or a king on the planet, like Imu is so far at least framed to be in the first world of the Harley. Now, these are words that you would use in the context of One Piece to describe someone more like Nika, the literal sun god, or more recently, the term would also be described to use the gods up in heaven, like the Lunarians. Or perhaps you would even use these words to perfectly describe a sun god who seems to have several ties to the Lunarians. As we learned in Enel's cover story, the heavenly races all descended literally from the moon, which is a place in space down from the heavens. Now, I do want to point out that I'm a little bit biased, as I'm a firm believer in the idea that Nika was a Lunarian based on all of these crazy tie-ins, so I kind of felt like I should at least add that in here. But ultimately, honestly, that point in itself isn't even that important for this video and just kind of adds some more extra backing to my Lunarian Nika theories on top of that. Instead, I think the really important part is that Nika is probably the dragon in this mural, as it appears to be battling the Serpent of Hellflame, not exactly teaming up with it. Again, remember, the Harley says that the Earth God was in possession of the Serpent of Hellflame, and considering the Hellflame Serpent is emerging from the city and the planet, it kind of seems more likely that, once again, Imu is the human Earth God and that Nika is the dragon coming down from heaven. Now, I'll totally admit that there is a real chance that the dragon and the Hellflame Serpent here are both maybe blasting the Arp Maxime or Uranus or whatever this is in the mural, and if that were to be the case, Imu is still being depicted as a dragon here. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I kind of really doubt that, so let's just continue talking about Nika being the original dragon here. What I found really fascinating is that Nika being the original celestial dragon also kind of lines up with so many actual mythologies where the greatest god is depicted as a dragon. A couple of my favorites here include Tiamat, the mother of gods and a literal dragon from Mesopotamian mythology. She's also the primordial sea, which does carry some cool One Piece implications, but that's kind of less important for this video. Then there are of course also the 4 dragon gods of Chinese mythology, the most iconic being Ao Guang, the eastern dragon who appears in the Journey to the West, which of course also heavily inspired Luffy and the entire story. But if that wasn't enough, even Yahweh, the Old Testament title for God, is sometimes depicted as having draconic elements like smoking nostrils and fire breathing in verses like Psalm 22:9, Yesaiah 30:27, and Psalm 18:9 here. I will say though, if the One Piece just ends up being 7 mythical orbs that let Luffy summon a dragon, I'm gonna throw a little bit of a fit. But we don't have to worry about that right now, because I think we first need to break down why I think that Imu actually consumed Nika, or how in the world he ended up becoming the celestial dragon himself. Now, I personally really like the idea that Imu ate Nika, but I also have reasons to believe that Imu's shadow is in possession of Nika's body, so we'll cover both ideas here. And the main root idea for both of these comes from Blackbeard and Moria, who both also have incredibly unique powers and properties that I think were hinting and foreshadowing the true history of the world this entire time. So first I want to go over how Blackbeard might tie into all of the dragon nonsense, and then Moria after. And I gotta say, Blackbeard has been bothering me for a long time now, and it's all due to that whole he's got a unique lineage and body that lets him have multiple devil fruits thing. I mean, of course, it's been a long-running theory that Blackbeard eats Whitebeard's heart to steal his own devil fruit, and that's why he throws the sheet up before stealing his power, because it's just too graphic for Oda to depict. And I do think that that theory works decently well with my dragon idea as well, especially when you consider what we really learned about Teach on Egghead Island. Because one key interaction here revealed quite a lot about him, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's this very moment from chapter 1107, where Katarina Devon says that Teach is special, and Saint Saturn, one of the Gorosei, says that his bloodline is also special. Then the Augur here says that the Blackbeard pirate's goal is to conquer just the entire world, and with all of the context I've been talking about, I kind of feel like some of you are probably seeing where my head is going with this. Because I kind of feel as if this line is connecting Blackbeard to an incredibly important lineage, and I don't think it's just the D-Clan, because Saturn wouldn't really talk about him so calmly if that were to be the case. Remember, the Gorosei and Imu absolutely despise the D-Clan, and when they talk about them to Cobra, you can just see how much it really bothers them. But no, instead Saturn is more kind of blunt here and even has a grimace on his face. And so, with the added point of Van Augur saying that Blackbeard's plan is to rule the entire world, Imu's current position, by the way, I'm kind of starting to believe that Marshal D. Teach is actually a descendant of Imu themselves. In other words, he wants to claim the world and become the Celestial Dragon, the god of the entire One Piece world, and he's using his own bloodline special trait, eating bodies and harvesting their powers, to do exactly that. I do want to point out that there's also a decent chance that the Nerona king from the first world died, and that Imu then picked up his role during the Void Century as their descendant, and now we're basically seeing this fated rivalry play out where a Nerona king is forced to battle Nika's will throughout the ages, and honestly, if that were to be the case, that works for me too. Sounds pretty fun. But my main thought here is that Blackbeard getting Whitebeard's fruit was pointing to how Imu originally became that Celestial Dragon by using his own bloodline powers to eat Nika and thus steal his body and powers. And funnily enough, I think that this would also explain where Nika's body went, as I kind of feel it's pretty clear that the red line is the former body of the Serpent of Hellflame. And there are a lot of cool points about the blood red snake from Dory and Broggy, the Jormungandr, the world serpent from Norse mythology, which seems to be referenced here, and considering that Nika fought the serpent and disappeared right after, he probably died in that very fight, and if so, his body also should be somewhere. And so my guess really is that Nika is just inside of Imu, and that's why when he attacks Sabo here, he starts to grow to a truly ridiculously massive size. It would also explain why he's giant and has wings in the second world mural, as it would literally be him in his Nika dragon form, and after realizing that, I think that Monkey D Dragon may also be another interesting piece of evidence for this potentially. Remember, he's framed as the man who will thwart the entire world government, and his entire arc is basically defeating the Celestial Dragon. So how fitting that the man framed against Imu more than anything else is also literally named Dragon. Just a little food for thought here on the side as well. But before I get ahead of myself, the Blackbeard part of this idea might also be wrong, and instead it could be Gecko Moria who might have hinted at how Imu actually took over Nika instead. Now, even though Thriller Bark isn't the strongest One Piece arc, remember that we've seen literal shadow possession on Thriller Bark, and it was also just brought up again in Elbaf, right before we get the giant mural that was revealed here. Because Usopp here mentions defeating Ors, referencing the Straw Hat Crew's final fight in Thriller Bark, like directly before that, and I kind of find it particularly interesting that Ors was a giant legendary warrior from an ancient era who was then possessed by a shadowy villain. In this case, a bad guy being possessed by the shadow of a good guy, Luffy, but it could just have been the other way around, that it was a good guy, Nika, being possessed by the bad guy, Imu. And again, for Imu themselves, as for all of their appearances, they're always depicted as a shadowy and mysterious figure. And Oda may have subtly brought up Ors to remind us of this very fact, dropped right before showing us exactly how Imu really became the king of the world in the mural. Imu's shadow possessed Nika's body and then transformed into this giant evil Nika figure that we see on the left side, wielding the Forbidden Sun. And there's actually yet another character that, interestingly enough, ties sort of into this as well, and that is, of course, Kaido. In a recent video, I actually just pointed out this line here where Kaido seems to reveal that he knew about the three worlds when he unleashes his attack Ragnarok, because he literally says conqueror of the three worlds before then unleashing that very attack, and I kind of thought it was super interesting once this was pointed out to me that it just can't be a coincidence. But what I found even more interesting is Kaido's motive as a character and his arc, which is of course him trying to start the big war, and how for so long he thought that he was gonna be Joy Boy. You know, the incarnation of Nika who brings about the end of the world and then, you know, saves it or shapes it in a new way. And you know what else Kaido is? A fish! That's right, I knew that the fish was gonna be important. No, I'm just messing with you guys. Kaido is actually, of course, a massive dragon who rules over Wano with an iron fist. And that means that Kaido, who is a dragon, thought that he was Joy Boy, who is the reincarnation of Nika. He also thinks that he would be able to be the conqueror or king of the three worlds, which again is what Imu quite literally is. And so maybe Kaido knew that Nika was a dragon, and since all of that stuff lined up pretty nicely with himself, it was only natural to assume that he was gonna be Joy Boy. But what he didn't realize is that Joy Boy was not a dragon, because he's just the reincarnated will of Nika as a devil fruit, not his literal physical body. And to me, I think that this might be the most important part. Imu's body is Nika, and that's all Imu needed to achieve his end goal, because regardless of whether Imu ate Nika or possessed Nika to become the celestial dragon with a shadow, the reason that he did it seems pretty clear to me. Nika came down and prevented Imu from harnessing the power of the Forbidden Sun, or Imu couldn't harness it whatsoever, and that's why he was only taking pieces out of it. But then after Nika and the Hellflame Serpent fought, Imu realizes that Nika, the sun god, could literally wield its full power. That's why Imu decided to take over Nika's body so that they could become the celestial dragon themselves, capable of wielding the complete Forbidden Sun. And so don't be surprised if Luffy's final fight is against a giant shadow dragon god or against the body of Nika themselves. Now, of course, this is just one way of interpreting the insanely detailed mural that you see at the end of 1138, because this thing, it's just full of crazy details, epic battles, and a ton of new and deep lore. But I think that there's even more in there, and it may reveal even more than you might even have realized or thought about. So if you want to see why I think that the One Piece planet is actually a star, how Nika was defeated, and how Luffy will end the entire series, go check out this video right here where I break down the Harley and this mural in full detail. And otherwise, thank you so much for all my Patreon supporters. You guys have been crushing it recently. We've been having a lot of fun with new content on the Patreon, so if you want to get early chapter reviews, if you want to get artwork, if you want to get early access to our great podcast, we've been having some pretty crazy guests on, go check that out and, you know, support the channel and get some cool perks. All right, I'll see you in the next one.